How's it going, everyone? So in today's episode, I'm going to be showing you some pretty easy and relatively inexpensive upgrades to try to make your coupler right where your transmission end of the tail housing is to your transfer case here. So the union between the transmission to the transfer case side, we're going to be talking about upgrading that when you're running a 23 spline input transmission. So one weak link that a lot of people have on any Toyota transmission that was primarily a 4-cylinder one. I'm not going to go on the details of every single transmission and what the options were, but this is more of just an upgrade from what you already had to a smaller spline to a bigger spline. So one thing that a lot of people do, again, it's easy for me just to hold this, so this is the back half of the transmission. So normally in a stock application, the input on this would be 21 spline, which is unfortunately small. And then your normal gear-driven case would bolt right up to that, right here. So typically, the union between the two, that's usually the weak link, the 21 spline going into the female side of the 21 spline. And a lot of people usually they'll get like an R150 that is 23 spline input, and then you have to do a really expensive adapter, and then you have to buy the 23 spline input on the transfer case side. So there's other options that you can do that a lot of people aren't aware of. So to give you an idea to the spline differences of the two, 21 to the upgrade to 23, again, I'll take a picture of these toward the end to kind of show all the parts that we have. So 21 spline to 23. So I'll try to get a little bit closer here. 21, 23. So stock, again, in this application, I have a W56 here. Stock, these had a coupler in them that went on the inside here. Again, that piece would go on here, and that was the input side, that the transfer case would sit like that. And then normally, this gear would be inside of the housing and then go to here. So in a lot of applications, right there is where that would split, just under a lot of torque, or sometimes just, strange things happen, tires bind up, maybe you had a pop start it real bad and that's where it let loose. So usually you pop it right here, your weekend's over. You're done, you're dead in the water, you're not going to deliver any power to the rest of the drivetrain. So instead of doing a small spline count here, again, a lot of people usually will get an R150 that's usually behind like a 3.0 or like a 3.4. Those are a V6 application. And the transmission on the back half will have a larger coupler here. But unfortunately, the bolt pattern is different. It's not your traditional gear-driven bolt pattern like that is usually behind a 4-cylinder. Usually came like behind like a 22R or 22RE. Those are the pretty normal ones to have. So a lot of guys would do the R150, the transmission's already 23 spline, then you have to buy an adapter. Then there's a couple parts that come with the adapter. Those can be expensive. I think nowadays they're about $600-700 just for the adapter. And then on the gear-driven side, which is now adapted to the R150 to the gear-driven side, then you buy the 23 spline, usually 228 gear here, and then you're upgraded. But it's just the hit of buying the 23 spline adapter piece that you need. It's a lot of money. And then some applications, again, it'll make the drivetrain even longer than what you have. And it's just, having an adapter is just more things to come loose, more things to maintain. If you ever have to take it apart and off and on, or you mess something up, you have to go back to whatever manufacturer made that adapter. And a lot of those parts are kind of proprietary, the couplers, the seals, etc. So there's an option that you can do that not a lot of people are aware of. So what you can do, you can take off the 23 spline. Again, this is 23, this is 23. You can take off the 23 spline. It's rare that the shaft on the transmission side lets go. I'm not saying impossible, but rare that this side breaks. Then you can actually upgrade. There's a company, I bought this one from Dave's Off-Road. They're by no means sponsored me for this video at all. They're just the only one I know that sell this retail. So you can get one that goes from 23 spline up to, I'm sorry, 21 spline to 23 spline. So then you can just swap that out and then pretty much put the transmission back together, and you no longer need an adapter. There aren't two pieces on there. Again, usually more aftermarket parts you have, the more problems you usually end up inheriting. So it's that easy. I'll do a quick breakdown of how this comes off. It's really, really, really easy. You need a hammer, a flathead, a 12, and a 14, and that's pretty much it. So I'll show you how I did it. Okay, so again, I already had this tore down because I didn't want you guys watching me struggle busting taking this off. And again, it's not hard at all. Very, 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 very simple. I will say, if you want to, I'm not recommending it because it's pretty easy to get this tail shaft housing off, but if you really want to, just the end piece that's inside the transmission, this piece right, I don't know if I can get it out now. This piece, that only comes off because I pressed it off earlier. It won't do that before you take any of this all off. These are pretty much pressed in and they're not coming out without a little bit of persuasion. But I would say, if you're ballsy enough to, let's say, weld something on here and put a stud on it, and then you were to put like a slide hammer, I'm very, very, very confident. Again, you'd have to pull a seal too, but I'm very confident you could get that out of here without even taking out the housing, and then just pop that back on, put your seal back in, and Bob's your uncle, you'd be finished. But if you don't want to do that, kind of intimidated by doing it, you don't have to. A little bit extra steps. Again, I would say probably an extra maybe 20 minutes of your time would be my assumption. So all you have to do, first step, take the shifter off, okay? Shifter off, couple bolts around the top side of this cast iron plate here. So all the bolts around here, take this off. You kind of have these little wedges here on the side. Use my little handy dandy pointer here. But these little guys here, okay? Those you can, what I like to do, I usually I don't hit them directly. I put a hammer here, and then I usually take a dead blow and I just softly tap it that way. So after you get all these bolts off, the shifter plate off, you are going to see, I'll try to turn this guy around here, you're going to see where the shifter goes into. I apologize, I don't know the name of it, but that little guy there's a bolt that sits right up top here. That little guy goes right here. You're gonna take that off, because when you go to slide this whole thing out, this guy is gonna come with the transmission, okay? And I'll show you how that works. So after you get all these bolts off, all these bolts out, that bolt out there as well, again, hammer underneath here. I just like to take a dead blow. It's not a lot of work. Tap the bottom, tap the bottom. There's kind of four corners you can work around. I usually like to get a flat head kind of in that surface and just try to walk the back of the housing up. Being that there's dowels, it won't move a ton. So after you get that free and clear, you're gonna hold this guy here and it'll come up with the transmission, just like that, okay? And then tail shaft housing's off. Now, this guy will be on here. Again, I already pulled this piece off. Shifter piece goes in like that. Again, I always recommend every step that you do, take some pictures. So you can just go back and look at what you did, how it came apart. You know, if something falls off, you're like, oh man, I don't know how that put together, you'll figure it out. So again, this piece is flush to the bottom. How I got it off, I tried to use the vice grips here. Unfortunately, it didn't work that well for me. So what I did, I just used like a Pitman arm puller, luckily, and was able to get underneath it enough. And I just tapped with a hammer like maybe 4 times and it came right off. You can use that. You can use like the 2-piece pullers that go around here, and then just a little taps. Or again, if you're brave enough to weld something on here and just, it would come off the same way as well. So now that we have all that apart, 21 spline coupler off, we're going to take our 21 to 23 spline. Again, you can't really mess this up because one blatantly goes one way. So once we're done there, again, I don't want to hit this directly. I'm going to put my dead blow there. Well, that really didn't need to get pressed on. It's not really getting pressed on to be honest. All right, so now that that's done and taking this off, I kind of messed up the gasket a little bit around here. I am going to clean all that up. I'm gonna right stuff it and then put it all back together, and then I'll show you once I'm done. Now that I can get camera a little closer here, I'll show you the difference between just the size in the 23 to the 21 spline. So coupler's out of the transmission already. So that would be the female side, of course. That is the male side here. This is the usually stock gear-driven side transfer case, the 21 spline, and then this is the upgraded 23 spline. So again, larger coupler, smaller coupler, and you can see the difference in the two of just the size. Again, it's not substantial. We're not going from 30, 35, 40 spline, but for usually a pretty normal Toyota application, usually guys running, let's say maybe like a 22R RE, RET, 2RZ, 3RZ, even a boosted application, this is a much stronger setup to have in the rig than a 21 spline. So again, relatively easy fix, pretty inexpensive. Again, this coupler was like, this coupler was like maybe $90, $100, somewhere around there. Again, pretty inexpensive compared to buying the adapter from the R1 series to whatever gear-driven case you have. So that's the difference between the two. All right, guys, and that is pretty much it. So again, you can do a substantial upgrade in spline count for a Toyota anyway, with a little bit of work, a little bit of homework. That's about it. Again, in my opinion, instead of spending $700-ish, or probably more now, I honestly haven't looked in a while, but instead of spending $700 for that adapter to do this, I just bought that coupler from Dave's Off-Road, and that was it. So just to let everyone know, I'm getting ready to take my truck, Turd Sandwich, and I'm gonna start upgrading. I got an RZ here that I'm working on. This is a 2RZ. I'm putting a 2RZ in it. Being that I'm gonna have a little bit more power, I usually try to push my rig as pretty hard as I can without being belligerent and just wanting to break stuff. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do the 23 spline, I'm also upgrading to the advanced adapters HD housings instead of having, an old 30, 35-year-old cast aluminum housing that usually has a lot of deflection in them just because they're thin. I'm upgrading to advanced adapter HD housings as well, so that should work pretty good. So I'm going to have both of these for my dual setup once I change everything over. So new to me transmission, going to have stronger housings, stronger spline count on the input. I already have a 4.7 doubler with a 23 spline, so it's ready the larger spline count in the reduction box. And then I'm gonna have RZ, so a little bit more Wapal, and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully you guys will be able to watch the transformation of the truck. I'll do my best on making videos for them. Or again, if you guys have any recommendations or things you want to see me do that you're just not familiar with, you just want to take a look at, let me know and go from there. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it.